All right, we finished month one of the program. We're in month two. Congratulations for doing that. I'm going to go through some sugar regulation. As we go through this process, there are things that I'm going to want you to know and that we can be healthy for life. This is not something that we're just going to do once. This is a lifetime thing. So this is an important lecture, one of my favorites. So here we go. All right, in America, we eat protein and carbohydrates. Protein and carbohydrates are two different things. It takes 21 amino acids to make a protein. That's what they're made up of. What are carbohydrates made up of? Yes, that's right, sugars. Carbohydrates are sugars. What do you think Americans like to eat more of? Do we like more carbs or more proteins? Yes, we love our carbohydrates. The ratio in America is that we eat 7 carbohydrates to 1 protein. Carbohydrates, again, are made up of sugars, and we have two different types of sugars and carbohydrates. We call them simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates. A simple carbohydrate is if I took a sugar and I connected it with another sugar, that is a simple carbohydrate. Let's take sucrose. Everybody's heard of sucrose, and anything that ends in ose is a sugar, okay? So if I took a molecule of sucrose and put it together with another molecule of sucrose, what I have is table sugar. We love table sugar. We want to put it in everything. We put it into our teas, we put it into our coffees, we put it into donuts, anything and everywhere we can put sucrose, we put it in. We love to eat sucrose, okay? That is a simple carbohydrate because it's two sugars put together. Then we have what's called a complex carbohydrate. And a complex carbohydrate are long chains of sugars. It takes a complex carbohydrate longer to break down into sugar than it does a simple carbohydrate. And we have lots of different types of sugars. Sucrose, again, we know that's table sugar. Lactose is milk sugar. Fructose is fruit sugar. We have dextrose, mannose, maltose, tons of different types of sugars. And we have this one called glucose. Glucose is not bad. We like glucose. It's what runs our body. We eat food and we convert the food into glucose. And that process is done through eating carbs and proteins and breaking it down into that glucose, okay? So I want to talk a little bit about the glycemic index. The glycemic index is how fast does that food break down into glucose. So when you look at foods, all of them are going to have a number that correlates going from 0 to 100. So the high glycemic index foods are going to be your sugars, your candies, your breads, your pasta. All of those things are going to break down into glucose very quickly. Your moderates are going to be your vegetables. Those are complex carbohydrates. And then we have our lows. Those are going to be our proteins. Proteins take about 2 to 2.5 hours to break down into glucose. So in America, if we're eating 7 carbohydrates to 1 protein, we're putting a lot of sugar into our bodies with that. So again, 7 carbohydrates. If we eat 7 carbohydrates, what do you think our blood sugar levels are going to do? Blood sugar levels are, yes, they're going to go up. So our blood sugar levels rise. We can only have between 9 and 11 milligrams per deciliter of sugar in the blood. Don't get caught up in the numbers and the names of that. It's a very small ratio. There's only a 10 in between the 9 and 11. If this number goes north of 16 or this one goes south of 6, we can literally go into a coma and die. Doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. Our body has all kinds of mechanisms, so it does it. What I'm trying to get is that it's a very narrow margin. If we go above 16 or less than 6, we've got problems. So our body has this mechanism of being able to prevent that from happening. And so we have this hormone called insulin that is released by the pancreas. So every time we start to eat or drink food and convert it into sugar, the blood sugar levels are going to go up, and then insulin is going to be released along with that. It goes with that. Let me back up just a little bit and kind of give you a reference of where that comes from. 9 to 11 milligrams per deciliter equals about 4 to 5 grams of sugar. If we consume 4 to 5 grams of sugar, it's going to dissipate into our body and reach that 9 to 11 milligrams per deciliter. That's not a lot of sugar. Do you know how much sugar is in a Coca-Cola? If you take a 12-ounce Coke, There's about 33 grams of sugar in a Coca-Cola. So if we put 33 in, that's a lot more than 4 to 5. It's going to raise this. And again, if we go above 16, we've got problems. So inside the pancreas, we have these little guys called beta cells. Beta cells are accountants. What they do is they count. They sit at the pancreas, they watch the blood go by, and they count. There's a sugar. There's a sugar. There's a sugar. They're making sure we're staying between the 9 and 11 milligrams per deciliter. But if we tip back a Coca-Cola, we dump 33 grams in, now the beta cells are going sugar, 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 and they're seeing a lot of sugar causing our blood sugar levels to go up. So the beta cell says, hey, pancreas, I need some help. And the pancreas, I got this, don't worry about it. And the pancreas releases the hormone insulin. Insulin will always rise with blood sugar. So insulin's job is to get the sugar out of the blood. So if we do that, what do you think happens to blood sugar? Blood sugar levels are then going to go down. We're getting it out of the blood. So then what happens is that insulin has done its job, and so what do you think insulin's going to do? It's going to go down also, but it's not going to go down quite as fast. And that creates this little period of time in here that we call the blackout period. The blackout period is that period of time after you've had some high carbohydrates, you kind of get that, whew, I'm tired. You start to get that, you know what I'm feeling about? Yeah, it comes in. That is that time of space of where the insulin levels have crashed and the blood sugar levels are coming down also. So we get that blackout period. What do we typically want to do when we have that blackout period? Yes, we're going to grab a cup of coffee, we're going to grab a bag of chips, maybe a donut. We need something to get our bodies going again. So what do we put in? We put in more carbs, and guess what happens? Blood sugar spikes, it's going to crash again. Insulin is going to follow the same pattern, and it's going to come back down again. And then we've created another blackout period. This is the way Americans eat. We spike, and crash, and when we do that over and over and over again, we are having these spikes that come in there, okay? So basically what we want to do is to prevent these spikes and crashes from happening. So how do we do that? How do we get to the point of not having the spike in sugar? Well, if you remember from our very beginning, I have you eating a 40, 40, 20. We're going to eat 40% protein, 40% complex carbs, and 20% fats. So what we've done is we've changed this ratio. Instead of a 7-to-1 ratio, now we're at a 1-to-1 ratio. So basically, we're not going to have as much sugar coming in. We're going to do the protein, and the proteins are going to take a lot longer to go down. I basically have you eating low and moderate glycemic index foods. Your moderates, again, are going to be your vegetables. Your lows are going to be your proteins. So we're eating this 1-to-1 ratio that goes here. So if we do that, what do you think our blood sugar levels are going to do? Blood sugar levels are definitely going to go up. We're putting it in, but there's this small little bump here. And if that happens, what do you think insulin's going to do? And again, insulin has to follow with sugar. As long as sugar's coming in the blood, the pancreas is going to release the insulin. And again, insulin's job is to take, this is a hard concept, insulin's job is to take the sugar that's in the blood and get it inside the cell. We want sugar in the cell. We don't want it in the blood. If it's in the blood, it causes problems. So the pancreas is going to release the insulin. Insulin has a key, and it's going to open up the door, and it's going to put the sugar inside the cell. Then it's going to go to the next cell. It's going to open it up, put the sugar inside the cell. And it's going to do that all the way down to the big toe. The insulin is putting the sugar inside the cells of the big toe. So once we have the sugar inside the cells of the toe, then what happens is that insulin's like, okay, I've got it all delivered. I've done my job. All the sugar is out of the blood in that. But insulin has to travel back home. Where does it live? Insulin lives in the pancreas. So it has to travel back up to the pancreas. But when the pancreas sees the insulin coming, it's like, oh, no, you're not coming in here. You need to go clean up. You stink. You've been sweating. You've been working really hard, and I don't want you messing up my house. So the pancreas forces the insulin to go to the liver to be cleaned up. So the liver cleans it up, and then it can be reuptake. That's why we have this little break of time. Sugar gets put into the cell, but insulin is still in the bloodstream and has to go to the liver to be cleaned up, so it creates that little blackout period with that. So if we eat a 1-to-1 ratio, we don't have a big spike in the sugar, so insulin follows along with it. At the top of the curve, guess what's going to happen to insulin? Insulin will follow it straight down along with it. It does the same thing, and it prevents that blackout period. Why? Well, number one, this is a crisis. If we go above 16, we can have really bad problems. So when we spike our blood sugars, the pancreas freaks out. It's like, oh my gosh, it's really high. It releases millions of particles of insulin. And so the insulin is getting its job, and then it all has to return. If we don't have a lot of sugar, it's not a crisis. So the pancreas goes, hey, Bob, you and Larry, go deliver all this stuff. So Bob and Larry go, okay, and they deliver the stuff. It's not hard to get a couple of insulin particles versus the mega ones that come with that. So I kind of talked about this earlier. I'm going to hit this back up. 33 grams is what's in a Coke. Dunkin' Donuts came to Tulsa, I don't know, it's probably 7-8 years ago. But when they did a study on the coffee, and it happened to be fall. And in the fall, they had their pumpkin spice latte. So the scientists took a pumpkin spice latte from Dunkin' Donuts that had the cream on top. And guess how many grams of sugar in that one large pumpkin spice latte? 184 grams of sugar in one coffee. That is a whole bunch. That equaled 14 donuts. Something inside of us says, I shouldn't eat 14 donuts. Now, I've done it. I've ate 14 donuts, but there's always something inside of me that says, you probably shouldn't do this. How many people are drinking one large pumpkin spice latte coffee and think that it's the same thing as 14 donuts? Not very many. So we're tons and tons of sugar into our body, and it is the pancreas' job to do that. And that's why we have the spike. So what we're doing, and what I've had you do in month 1, is to eat this 1-to-1 ratio, the 40-40-20. And so now what I'm looking at your blood work is we have these little short bumps. So if we have these short ones, when do we have a blackout period? Yeah, we don't. The blackout period goes away. I have said all of this to get to this one point. The only time your body stores fat is when your insulin levels are higher than your blood sugar levels. I'll say it again. The only time your body will store fat is when insulin is higher than blood sugar. What is fat? What's it made up of? Fat is basically excess sugar. Sugar is the fuel. Again, we use glucose as the fuel for our body, so it's not a bad thing. We eat food, we convert it into glucose. And then once we do that, if we have excess glucose, our body's like, I got too much of this stuff, what do I do with it? I don't want to get rid of it. You know what? I'm going to stick it in the belly. I'm going to stick it in the buttocks. I'm going to stick it in the legs. I'm going to stick it in the liver. We're going to save that sugar and convert it into fat so that we can use it as a fuel later. That only happens here. So my question then becomes, if you don't have a blackout period, when do you store fat? That's right, you don't. It's impossible to store fat if we have these little bumps. That's why I want you eating a 40-40-20 5 times a day. I don't want to have these. Again, I have taken away all of the good foods. We've taken away all the breads, all the sugars, all the stuff that goes with that, and we're just eating meat and veggies. By doing that, we've prevented the spikes. The pancreas is like, oh, thank you. It's not working as hard. But if we continue to eat like this, and this is how America does it, we have a very high carbohydrate breakfast. What's for breakfast nowadays? Pancakes, muffins, orange juice. All of those things are carbohydrates, which are made up of sugar. So we eat this high carbohydrate, spike our sugar, and we have a lot of energy. We can go get a lot done. And then at 10 o'clock, we have our donut break. And so we jack ourselves back up again. Then we go to lunch at noon and have more carbohydrates, chips and salsa. And that takes us to about 3 o'clock. And we have an afternoon break where we get a bag of chips or a Coke. And then we eat dinner at 6. And so literally what we're doing is we're spiking, crashing, spiking, crashing, spiking, crashing over and over again. And when we do that for week after week, month after month, year after year, somebody's working really, really hard. Who's working hard? Pancreas. And so the pancreas does this for a long period of time. It finally gets to the point of saying, I can't do this anymore. And the pancreas says two words. I quit. Can't do this anymore. You've worn me out. Guess what we call that? Yeah. That's exactly what it is. That is diabetes. Diabetes is not necessarily a genetic disorder. There's different types of diabetes. You have type 1, type 2, type 3. Type 1 is genetic. It's what we call juvenile diabetes. That's where the pancreas just doesn't work like it's supposed to. Again, genetic. Type 2 of diabetes is what we call diabetes mellitus, and that is the one that we see so much of. And it's not because our family history has it, it's because we've been spiking and crashing. We have worn the pancreas out. And again, the way that we fix that is to go to a one-to-one. I love the paleo diet of where we're eating half our plate in meat, half of our plate in vegetables, and we're cooking and eating good fats. And I can see by the blood work that that is the thing that's happening. We've taken these spikes away and your sugars are regulating. And again, if we don't have a blackout period, we don't store fat. That's why we see your weight coming down. All of this is controlled by a hormone called leptin. Leptin is that hormone that says, you're full. We quit listening to leptin a long time ago. We think we're full when we've shoved enough food that we stretch our stomach and say, okay, I'm full, I can't take any more. I need leptin to come back alive. I need your body to hear leptin so that we know when we're full. I've done a lot of study in longevity, and do you know how many calories per day should we have? Everything is on what we call the recommended daily allowance. And typically what you see is 2,000 calories per day. So when you look at the labels, it'll say based on a 2,000 calorie per day diet. So they have actually changed this. It's no longer 2,000. Guess what they've done? They've raised it to 2,500 calories per day. Why would they do that? They don't want to shame people. If you've ever been to McDonald's and you have a Big Mac, a Coke, and some fries, you're done. That's 2,000 calories. And so people say, I can't eat just 2,000 calories per day. So they said, okay, we don't want people to be embarrassed. We're going to raise it to 2,500. That is not the way to do it. In the studies of people who live to be over 100, we call them centurions. Crazy stories that come with it. There was one lady that smoked cigars and drank scotch literally all day long and made it to over 100. Crazy stories. One of the things that was always consistent when it came to longevity is that their diet was somewhere between 12 and 1,500 calories per day. When the body is only processing 12 to 1,500 calories per day, it will last a long time. If we're eating 2,500, 3,000, some people do 5,000 that are trying to gain, those calories, that makes your systems work harder, we wear them out. So if longevity is the answer and that's what you're looking for, a healthy life, I want to eat 12 to 1,500 calories per day. Now, if you're eating pie, if you're eating McDonald's, that goes away really fast. But do you know how much broccoli you would have to eat to get to 12 to 1,500 calories per day? Bushels. This is a lot of food when you're eating low and moderate foods. You can eat 5 times a day and never even get to those numbers. I like to use this analogy. Think of it like a race car. If anybody's into NASCAR, do you know how fast those cars go? They're 200 miles an hour for 500 laps around the thing, 500 miles around the thing. Do you know how long the engine in a Daytona 500 car is designed to last? One race. There's no chance they're going to use the same engine when they race this weekend compared to next weekend. Not going to happen. They build the engine, they use it so hard that they burn it up. Hopefully they're first, but there's no chance that engine's going to be in their next one. That is when we're eating this stuff. We're using our systems way too hard. It burns it up faster. So the idea is we want a Prius. And if you have a Prius, that car will go 500,000 miles because it's not running at high RPMs, it's running at low RPMs. So when we're looking at longevity, when we're looking at health, the idea is to eat, again, the low to moderate glycemic index foods, eating somewhere around 12 to 1500, and we want to bump those about five small meals a day.